Diamond burial. Diamonds are made from carbon. Guess what the ashes of a cremated dead person contain? Carbon. If you want to carry your loved one with you wherever you go, it is possible to have his or her remains turned into diamonds. Have the diamonds set in a ring, necklace or earrings, and your loved one remains beautiful and sparkling forever. Ecological funeral. Those concerned about the environment are increasingly turning to biodegradable coffins and other means of being environmentally friendly. However, you don't need a pine box to be ecologically friendly in death. In Sweden, there is increasing interest in using science to help decomposition along. First, your body is reduced to a fine powder through a special process. And, since there are metals in your body, these can be recycled. So the metals from your body are separated out and sent to be reused in various products. Then, your remains are placed in a biodegradable container and buried. Once the container breaks down, your own remains are easily absorbed, since they are in the form of an earth-friendly powder. Custom fantasy coffins. You might consider being buried in a custom coffin, based around one of your hobbies. In Ghana, these fantasy coffins are quite common and are built around a theme. Do you really like fishing? Your coffin could resemble a huge fish. The idea is to provide the deceased with something that he or she can enjoy for eternity. Hanging coffins. In China, there are coffins hanging off a cliff. These coffins contain the remains of members of the Bo. The Bo people are now extinct, but they once lived in what is now southwest China. Instead of putting their dead in the ground, they lowered coffins down on a cliff, hanging by ropes caught on stakes pounded into the rock of the region's mountains. Mummify yourself. This one is really hard, since it requires a great deal of discipline. But around 24 Buddhist monks in Japan have gone through the process. It requires a strict 3-year diet of seeds and nuts, and then another 3 years of eating only roots and bark. The monks also have a specific exercise regime that gets rid of the body's fat. A special tea is also drunk during this time, which coats the inside of the body with a lacquer-like substance. When the monk is ready, he gets into his tomb and meditates until he dies. Once a day he rings a bell. Once the bell stops ringing, the other monks know it's time to seal the tomb. Sati. In order to show her devotion to her husband, a woman in India might throw herself onto the funeral pyre of her husband. This ancient Hindu custom was rather rare even at its height, and it has been outlawed in India today. However, there are still some stories of self-immolation by wives. The reward for this act of devotion? The woman was said to become a goddess. Sky burial. This is an interesting custom that includes making use of birds to help with your burial. In Tibet, monks chop up your body and grind your bones, and offer your remains to the vultures, which then take your remains to the sky. Space burial. One of the most modern funeral customs is the space burial. It is possible to have your remains shot up into space on a missile. One astronomer, Eugene Shoemaker, is even buried on the moon. In some cases, it is possible to have a small portion of your remains sent into space for as little as $1,000. Strangling family and friends. One of the more colorful funeral customs comes from Fiji. A great funeral feast was held for the deceased, and then, as part of the festivities, the members of a deceased man's family, and even sometimes his friends, were strangled. Servants could also be strangled and buried with the man. This way, he went into the next life surrounded by friends and family. Turning of the bones. It is a funeral celebration years after the funeral. Every few years, around 7, in Madagascar, corpses are dug up and a big celebration is held. Villages hold big parties, and everyone dances around the corpses. The shroud of the deceased is replaced with a fresh new shroud. But the old shroud doesn't go to waste. Instead, it is torn into different pieces and passed around to married couples. The couples then place the pieces of cloth beneath their mattresses and it is supposed to help them conceive children. Under home burial. One of the ways that the poor among the Maya kept records was by burying items under their homes. But it wasn't just things that were buried, some Maya also buried their relatives under their homes. This way, family histories could remain in the family, and it was possible to keep dead family members close, within the walls of the home.